Have you ever thought that your thoughts are like trails in the sand? Your thoughts tend to categorize themselves in groups. And those thinking patterns are like trails on the sand. So when you think, you tend to follow the same thinking patterns again and again. Like the wheels of a car being sucked into the same trail of sand, and often it's difficult to get out. But how can you break the pattern of thinking that creates anxiety if you cannot escape the sand? Some of these thoughts might be terrifying and they might keep you up at night. So one of the unhelpful things you can do is to give in to one of those torturous thoughts you've been suppressing, because then you'll be suppressed. Because that's when you allow yourself to be dragged into the infinitely possible answers to the question, what if? What if I do this? What will happen then? Or what if I hadn't done this? How would then my life might have turned out? Or what if they think X, Y, Z of me? Or thousands of other what ifs. What happens when we think like that is that the areas of our mind and our psyche that act as alarm systems, that is the anxiety mechanisms, they are attempting to think things through, and they're utilizing fiction to do so. And so this line of thinking is tormenting you because it's natural for your brain to constantly look out for unpleasant events and unpleasant scenarios to think of, and then it's thinking, well, what if? What if? And that is where your memory systems play a huge role. I have made another video specifically on memory and how those memory systems work in relation to anxiety, and I'll put the link somewhere up here and in the description below. So back to what if. Behind this what if question hides the purpose of both thinking and remembering, and that is to protect us from future dangers. And if you start thinking about all the negative possibilities of what if, you'll want to do everything in your power to run away from these thoughts, especially when they begin to flood your mind. But all this does is make this mechanism, this anxiety alarm system, more likely to create even more of those ideas and scenarios, because now it thinks, oh, he's not listening. He's not listening to my warning, therefore he'll be in more danger. He's not attending to our needs. So imagine it as a separate self that lives within you. And that's a really good way of thinking about it, that you have an alarm system which is like an entity that lives inside of you. So this entity warns you about a possible threat. And if you do not listen to what it has to say, it thinks you are ignoring it. But this entity's only job is to protect you. So it will keep warning you till you listen. This means that it will amplify, it will increase the intensity with which it is trying to warn you, and it will also increase the frequency with which it is trying to warn you if you do not attend to it. And you see how this turns out, right? You see the vicious circle that you're going in there, because the more you are ignoring it, the more it will amplify its message, and the more anxiety symptoms it will manifest until you listen. So what's the solution to get out of this? What is there for us to do? Well, there's a two-step process you can follow to reduce your anxiety levels next time they appear. The first step is physiological, and the second step is psychological. And the reason for that is that anxiety is both physiological and psychological. This means that you cannot talk your way out of anxiety, and you cannot intellectualize your way out of anxiety, because it also has a physical manifestation. Therefore, we need to tackle this by using both a physical and a psychological technique. Okay, so I'm in the middle of the desert, I'm doing this video, and I have switched off the engine to be able to hear me better, which means that it's getting really, really hot in here. So what I'm gonna do, I'm gonna head back home and we'll continue the video back there. So how do these physiological and psychological techniques look like? Let's head back home and I'll tell you all about it. So the first thing we do, step number one, is the physiological technique, because the first thing you want is to calm your body down. And this technique is rooted in the biological mechanisms that regulate the stress levels in our body. It's called physiological sigh, and it's basically the way our body has to calm itself down. Scientifically, the benefits of this sigh were discovered back in the 30s, but more extensive research was conducted by Jack Feldman, a world-famous neuroscientist and an expert in the neurobiology of respiration at UCLA, and by Mark Krasnow, a professor of biochemistry at Stanford. So what is this physiological sigh? You see, when we sleep and the levels of carbon dioxide in our bloodstream rise, we all engage in this breathing rhythm. Or when you see a baby cry, or even when you cry, it's the pattern our breathing follows in an attempt to calm us down. It's a set of inhalations and exhalations that act as a response to distress, and it's essentially a double inhale followed by an extended exhale. So if you bring to your mind the state you are when you cry, your breathing sounds a bit like this. Something like that. And that's a physiological sigh doing its calming work unconsciously. And the reason why it works so well and brings you to a relaxed state is that it offloads a lot of carbon dioxide from your lungs all at once. Dr. Andrew Huberman talks a lot about this physiological sigh, and he's done a lot of research in his lab at Stanford. And he saw that even with 1, 2, or 3 sighs of that pattern, people were able to bring down their stress levels really fast. So this first step you can do in real time next time you feel your anxiety being overwhelming. You just find a quiet spot and you do that physiological sigh. It only takes 3-4 breaths and you will immediately feel the difference. I do it every day as a meditation practice. And this is how you do it. You take one big inhale through the nose, pause for a bit, then sneak a bit more air. That's the crucial part. And then a long exhalation through the mouth. That's it. That's it. It's that simple. You do this 3-4 times when you're stressed and you will immediately feel the benefits. I do it often at work when I'm really stressed out. And now let's move to step number 2, the psychological technique. And this is not an easy one, and at times it might be frightening, but it's the only way to get through it. So after you calm yourself down with a breathing technique, you want to voluntarily bring to your mind the scenario that horrifies you and gives you all this anxiety. Try bringing to mind all those what-if scenarios and watch them play out. Try to watch the whole thing and see what comes out, however frightening it may be. As you do that voluntarily, what you're actually doing is that you are indicating to that entity within you, that mechanism which warns you. You indicate to it that you're courageous enough, that you have the strength to confront the stressful situation, and that alone is therapeutic. You're showing to that entity, to that alarm system, that you are there and you're paying attention to what it is trying to tell you, and you're not running away from it. Now, you may have to do this several times and with several scenarios in order to calm this alarm system down. But once you start doing it, you'll know that you are confident enough not to run away from the warning. And that entity within you will know it too. And it may be the case that the anxiety those scenarios evoke is terrifying. And then you may have to do this again and again, but the more you do it, the more confident you will feel about your capacity to face whatever terror those scenarios play out. And that's what this entity wants to feel. It wants to feel that you are in control of taking care of it, of taking care of you. That's when this alarm mechanism, this entity, will stop amplifying its message to you through that sense of anxiety. So what does this process look like? Well, pick one scenario that makes you anxious and see how it plays out. Maybe you're anxious about losing your job. Maybe you're anxious about your partner cheating on you, or even worse, you're anxious about your parent or your child dying. So what will you do? The real answer is that you do not know. And how can any of us know how exactly we will react in a situation like this? The truth is that it will be devastating. You think it might be the end of the world. And it's normal to think that. Any human being would think that. But that is not helpful. because you have to go through disasters and tragedies and lose people you love. But you also need to be strong enough for the people who need you, because if you crumble to pieces when something bad happens to someone you love, then where does this leave the other people who love you? And these are not easy scenarios to play out, and again, they might be terrifying, but you have to think through whatever terrifies you and overwhelms you with anxiety. So you think about it, you play the scenario out, and you see that when you hear the news, you will grieve, and you'll go to the funeral of the one you love, and it will be so dreadful that you don't even want to think about it, and it will be a living tragedy. But people live through tragedy, and your determination to live through it and to tolerate those thoughts will not only calm those systems down, but will also show you that there are hidden forces, sometimes really dark forces within you. Dark forces like the one Carl Jung used to call the shadow. And I'll make a separate video on that. But those dark forces are the ones that once you integrate them into your conscious self, they give you the strength to endure. And a way to do that is that you let your thoughts take you where you do not want to be taken. And you do that voluntarily. That is the key. You look into your dark thoughts voluntarily. Until you do that, those alarm systems will amplify their voice till you pay attention. Only by paying attention, you'll quiet them down. Because then they will know that you are there for them. You are paying attention. You're being capable to take care of you. If you like that video, hit the like button and subscribe to my channel. It's a small act that means a lot to me and to the future of this channel. I'm Dimitris, and I share tools and insights on how to design a well-lived life.